Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, whenever and however you're listening to the podcast. We appreciate that you are. This is the Delaware High School Football Pod presented by Websites for Sports, and we're the only media outlet in the state exclusively dedicated to high school football in the first state. Pod is available wherever you listen to your favorite podcasts, also on YouTube for those who prefer to see what you're listening to follow us on X at DELHS Football and on Facebook at the DELHS Football Pod. And of course, you can just Google that anytime you want to find anything on either of those channels. I want to start out by thanking our title sponsor, Websites for Sports, created and managed by Brian Ritter, and it's the only place you can find the schedule of every high school team in Delaware, and that was Brian Rutter, excuse me. On that schedule, it tells you the home team, the away team, and the location of the game, even has a map with directions. It's really a one-stop shop for high school schedules, and many of the teams now are also putting their stats up after games. And here's my favorite feature. You can sign up for schedule alerts. So I load my son's schedules before the season starts, and without this alert, I might not show up at the right time when the schedule changes. So I love that one. Bottom line, if you have a child playing middle or high school sports, or even if you're just a fan, this is the one and only website that provides accurate and up-to-date schedules, and they do it all completely for free. We can't thank Brian Rutter from Websites for Sports enough for what they do for our interscholastic sports, and of course, for their sponsorship of this podcast. Just another way they're supporting interscholastic athletics. That's websites, the number 4 sports.com. All right, Marty, week 0. And I'm hoping it's the last year they call it week 0. And I know you agree with me, and several other media people do as well. There were 15 games. There were 0 upsets. None of the first-time coaches got their first wins this week. So we have that to look forward to, hopefully, next week, the 5 new head coaches. But, you tweeted out about halfway through the day, or I forget when it was, Friday or whatever, that, it was a good first week 0. And I have to agree with you. It's great to have high school football back. That's the one thing I like about week 0. I don't like they call it week 0. I want it to stay when it happens. I just want them to call it week 1 because that's what it is. But I just thought a really good week. It had some blowouts, but you're going to get that when you have, you have a lot of class 3A versus 2A, 2A versus 1A. That's going to happen. But overall, I think a good first week 0 for the DIAA high school football season.
I do too. I started calling it week 1, part 1. Week 1, part 2 will be this week. But yeah, there was some good. And I would clarify one thing: no major upsets in state. We did have one out of state that was we'll talk about in a little bit. But yeah, and last when we had the original podcast back on August 4th, I think to preview the season a little bit, we said that Lake Forest Odessa might be the game of the weekend, and it really kind of did turn out to be the game of the weekend. It was an exciting game. It was great to have the 302 guys back on the air. Glenn Frazier and Pat Garriani's is like 90% football and 10% variety show. You get a great show from those two. And they had the Lake Forest Odessa game, which was great. Benny Mitchell and Jim Tack were back. It's just great to have everything going again. And yeah, some of the games, I mean, like just off the top of my head, Laurel giving Sussex Central a run for 3 quarters. Yeah. And then so there was some, as you said, you're going to get the blowouts. You always do, especially this time of year. The 1As are still trying to figure out their rosters. And like you said, when the 2As are playing 1As, it can get a little out of hand quickly. But all in all, 15 games. And I thought a lot of them were competitive. There were some great storylines throughout some of the games. So yeah, overall fun week.
Yeah, I'll just mention, because we don't have it on our list to talk about the Sussex Tech Glasgow game, which Sussex Tech ended up winning by a bunch. But I was at that game, and here's what impressed me the most. When I pulled up to that game, the visiting stands were crowded. There were over 100 people in the stands. The cheerleaders were there. The band was there. It was just a great away game for Sussex Tech. So hats off to them. They had more students there, Marty, than Glasgow did. Good or bad, it's sad for Glasgow overall, but good, good for Sussex Tech. Glasgow, the crowd slowly poured in when I first got there, which was right around kickoff. I was counting heads in the Glasgow side of the stands, but they did pour in as the game went on, and a well-played game. And so I just wanted to mention Sussex Tech, great job on a Labor Day weekend. That would have been impressive in October.
I agree. I saw that picture on Twitter, and I was shocked at how many black and white jerseys and jackets and stuff were in the stands. I mean, that was fantastic. And then, of course, I had 89. I took the under on that game, so I lost by a point. I would not have guessed 90 points between Sussex Tech and Glasgow, but there you go. They're part of the fun weekend. There you
Yeah,
go.
it sure was. All right, let's start about the game you pointed out first, Lake Forest and Odessa. Lake Forest pulled it off 18-14. It's the second year that Lake Forest has opened up with Odessa, and of course, we're in the second year of the 2-year schedule. So a lot of the games, these first few weeks especially, are just the same as last year, just flipped the home field, basically, is what happens. You had veteran head coach Freddie Johnson, who I talked to last week when I was down at Lake Forest. He's fired up for the season. And you got a first-time coach, Nick DeGotti, who's going to win a lot of games. Just wasn't able to pull this one out. Odessa led 7-0 at the end of the first quarter, 14-6 at the half. All Lake in the second half, touchdown each quarter. But more importantly, as you pointed out to me by way of X, it was a huge effort by the Lake defense there.
It was. They went the last 25 minutes of the game without allowing Odessa any points. And for the most part, they were flying all over in the Lake Forest, or excuse me, in the Odessa backfield. This looked early on. Odessa got a couple breaks where they set up deep in Lake Forest territory, and they were able to get a couple scores, including one where there was a punt that just happened to be into the teeth of a wicked wind at the time that didn't go anywhere, and it really set Odessa up. And it kind of looked like Odessa was rolling. He said Nick DeGotti's brought a new attitude and enthusiasm to that team, but Lake Forest just kind of stuck with it. They hung in there. They gave up the score right before halftime. I think it was with about a minute left, and then they shut them down for the rest of the game. Josh Webb, who was the quarterback's coach for the last several years at Lake Forest, was promoted to defensive coordinator. If you think about it, you think it's kind of actually makes sense, that progression from quarterback coach, now a guy who's reading it from the defensive side. So his defense was phenomenal. You had, of course, Aiden Young, 84 yards and 2 touchdowns. I think one of them was a 70-yarder that really kind of got Lake Forest going. They had 4 sacks on the day. Ian Nance, 13 tackles. Ja'Kai Hodnott, 6.5 tackles, 2 tackles for loss. Raekwon Sullivan, 2 sacks. So this was a defense everybody kind of pitched in. And I spoke with Josh after the game, and he just couldn't sing the praises more of his defense. And it was the same thing. It was like, yeah, we got put in bad positions early on and we gave up some points. And he said that, the message at halftime was, let's tighten it up. And they did. And it turned out to be a great game. As you said, if I'm Odessa, I don't take anything negative away from this game. I saw an offense that looked pretty efficient at times. It's going to take Nick time to get things going as he implements his program there. His brother's the offensive coordinator. He's doing a nice job. So I think both of these teams are going to be in good positions going forward. Lake Forest, now, this come playoff time, this could be a huge win that differentiates, one team making it and another not.
They could get even a bigger win next week. Lake Forest could, because they host CR.
That's right.
CR is coming off the William Penn win, but the bonus points you get when you play up a class, if Lake Forest is able to pull that win off next week, it becomes even bigger. So that'll be a home opener for Lake Forest, and that's going to be it's a great atmosphere down there in those small towns down in Sussex County. Odessa's going to head to Appo, so they're going to have their hands full. The one advantage, just like last year, Odessa has a game under their belt. Appo does not. Appo scrimmaged Cape, they scrimmaged Delcastle, and they scrimmaged Brandywine. So 2 2A teams and 1 1A team they scrimmaged. So it'll be interesting to see. Brian Timpson will have his guys. All these coaches have their players ready to play. It's just a question of whether they come out and play.
That's right.
They're prepared for. Friday night under the lights. Appo's always got a good crowd. I'll be there, of course. And that's where my boys go to school. And so, they've got they've got a slate of wide receivers. Appo does, starting with first-team All-State player Noah Hoff. And then they got Jazier Rogers, who transferred from Red Lion. Dylan Griffin, who can play receiver if they need him. And then Dom Monabel, who would be the starting wide receiver, the number 1 wide receiver on more than half the teams in Delaware if he played somewhere else.
And Jazier Rogers is a Penn State commit. So,
yes. So
and then, of course, at the quarterback position, you got Greg Nielsen, who missed most of last year with an injury, but who played really well before that. And then Desai Drummond, the transfer in from Howard, that maybe both those guys get snaps. When we saw the scrimmages, you saw Desai was the athlete who could get out on the edges and give you that as well. Greg is the drop back passer. So a lot of weapons there for Appo this year. They're going to be a tough team to beat.
Yeah, I can see them bouncing both quarterbacks in and out, especially early on in the season, as each one of them gets their feet wet. So Odessa will head to Appo Friday night at 7 o'clock. All right. The game that kicked it all off in week 0, again this year, as they did last year up at the Pigskin, Classic at Abyssinia, was Hodson and Howard. An ugly game, according to Coach Dave Collins, but he said, I'll take ugly in a win. And as I said, you can fix ugly after a win. You can't change a pretty loss into a win come playoff.
I love that.
time.
Yeah.
A loss is a loss. So 21-6, Hodson beats Howard, a 3A versus a 2A game. Two Votech schools, big rivalry. Dave Collins, Dan Ritter, the head coach of Hodson, good friends as well. Howard was the home team, but this Classic was in their home field. So it would have been a home field even if they were the away team. But again, it was the second year that these two teams faced off. It'll be interesting to see if they do again this year when the new cycle of schedules come out. If they do next year, kick it off as well at this Pigskin Classic, which seems to be an event that's here to stay. But for the second year in a row, Hodson starts off with a win. And for the second year in a row, they'll be heading to Caravel, hoping the results a win this year and not a loss. But it was a good kickoff for Hodson and Howard. Good game for both.
It was. And real quick, a message to the Pigskin Classic people: just arrange for some streaming too. Those are two good games to not, especially at 3:30 in the afternoon. A lot of people can't go to that game.
And the camera's up. The camera's
up. Exactly. They just for some reason they didn't do it. But this was a great win for Hodson right out of the gate. Brashim Davis, the 37-yard interception return for a TD to seal it. He also had 4 catches for 50 yards. Xavier Brown, who I think is going to be the key here this season, if the offensive line can hold up, he was very efficient. 11 of 22, 150 yards, threw a 32-yard touchdown to Darian Lockhart. And I thought Hodson's defense, it sounds like they played extremely well, according to the accounts I saw. And, for Howard and Dan Ritter, this is post RJ Matthews life now, where they're not going to be able to put up 50 points a game at the drop of a hat. And I think it's just going to take time for that team to kind of reestablish their identity. They lost a lot of high-powered pieces from that team last year. And, of course, they're playing up. So there's really nothing to lose here. Howard's still, clean slate as it comes to the 2A level. But I just thought for Dave Collins, another great start to the season with another win over Howard. It's a rivalry game. Both teams get up for it. And by all accounts, again, for the second year in a row, very clean, a lot of handshakes after the game. And so a good way to kick off the season.
As I mentioned, Hodson will play at Caravel. It'll be a home game for Caravel, obviously, but ironically, it's also the home field for Hodson this year. Their stadium has been demolished and the new school is being put up. And so Hodson will play its home games at Caravel. So they'll actually end up playing there 6 times this year instead of 5. And I know Coach Dave Collins is looking for a different outcome than last year when they went in and got beat by, let's face it, Marty, a Caravel team that could compete at the 3A level, at least in the lower half of the 3A
That would have
level.
been a playoff team at the 3A level. Absolutely. That team was absolutely loaded. And just a side note, 302 will be streaming that game Thursday night, Hodson and Caravel. So that's great because that should be a fantastic matchup.
And Howard, they're going to have an off week. A couple of these teams that played in week 0 do take week 1 off, or at least they weren't able to schedule a game. And then Howard's going to host Caravel. So Caravel starting off with 2 tough games. John Reed will have his guys ready as there. All right, every senior has a story to tell, and at Andre L Photography, they bring these stories to life. Their portraits go beyond the traditional, capturing the essence of who they are in this pivotal moment of their lives. They create senior portraits that tell the authentic story of each student and their hard work. Celebrate your senior's journey by booking a session today at AndreLphotography.com. Does exceptional work. He did a sit down with my son Riley, and the pictures were just unbelievable. And he's actually ended up doing a lot of the sports teams at Appoquinimink High School as well as other schools. He takes pictures that your cell phone is just not going to do.
I actually, after you posted some pictures, I actually got messages from 2 different parents asking me how they could get in touch with Andre. So
yeah,
Andre's a popular guy at this time of year.
Hey, when you have talent.
That's right.
All right, let's go to Cape and Red Lion. Cape pulls this one out 21-13. Again, the second year these two teams kicked off playing against each other. Cape Class 3A, Red Lion, a very good Class 2A team in the playoffs last year. Ironically, last year, Cape won 20-14, so very similar scores. Vikings coming off a title game performance. Lions have one of the top quarterbacks in the state, Evan Budinger. Cape took a 14-point lead. Evan brought him back, just wasn't able to pull it off in the end.
No, and this was it almost went exactly to script as last year. Cape got off to a 2 touchdown lead last year. Red Line had to fight their way back. I think again, this is a great opener for both teams. I think Mike Frederick at Cape, coming off that state championship game appearance, they're flying high. Nothing negative to take out of this game if you're Red Lion. You're playing a team that's up. You're playing a bigger team on both lines. And as you said, Evan Budinger came out and showed what he can do. I think by the end of the season, he's going to be one of the best quarterbacks, if not the best quarterback in the state. He works with Nolan Henderson, which can't hurt. So this was all in all not a bad performance. Of course, Cape gets the win. Red Lion moves on, and Cape is going to be interesting this year because there's some loaded teams at 3A again, but they've got the confidence. They've got some guys to replace, including Marky James, who was the big gun last year for them. But, Mike Frederick seems to be gradually improving this program. Actually, I say gradually, really quickly seems to be putting his mark on this program. So it'll be interesting to follow them as the season goes on.
So Cape is off, another team that's off in week 1, and then they're going to travel upstate and play 2A Del Castle. So starting off their season against 2A teams, Red Lion is going to go over across the street basically and play at Glasgow. That's an 11 o'clock game on this Saturday. And so Red Lion hoping to get back in the win column, of course, facing a Glasgow team that put up 20-plus points against Sussex.
Yeah, it was 34. They put
34,
up yesterday.
you're right.
Yeah.
I'm sorry.
Yeah, so Ken Anderson's got to be a little nervous about that.
20-plus when I left.
That's right.
All right, Sussex Central 41, Laurel 20, another 3A versus 2A game. This is a Sussex County rivalry. Closer game than many thought. It was actually tied at 20. And then Sussex County, John Wells rallied his team to score the last 3 touchdowns. Defense shuts out Laurel in the fourth quarter. 4 different Golden Knights scored touchdowns, Marty. And that impressed me more than anything, when you have 4 different players score touchdowns first game of the season.
Yeah, no, I thought this was great. This was a showcase of Sussex Central's talent. As you said, I think I texted you or I put it out on Twitter. It was 20-6, I believe, Sussex Central. And then all of a sudden, Laurel came roaring back. And right before the half, they tie the game. So it's 20-20 in the third quarter. Malik Bell, another fantastic performance for him. He's one of the best running backs in the state, 2 touchdowns, and we'll talk about him a little bit later. Quarterback Bradley Chavez, who we'll also talk about a little bit later for a different kind of interesting reason, which I texted you I'd never seen before. He ran for a touchdown through a 45-yard touchdown pass to Josiah Johnson. Laurel, again, this is one of those kind of like Cape Red Lion matchups where I don't think either team, if you're Sussex Central, of course, you come out with the win, you're thrilled with it. But if you're Laurel, there's not, you're not too down about this. You hung with this team for a long time. And let's face it, Sussex Central, again, like Cape, is bigger on both lines. And eventually, as the game wears on, the roster sizes also come into play too. It's kind of like when you have the FBS and the FCS matchups, those 95 scholarships versus 63 scholarships take their toll after a while. So I thought a great overall performance from Laurel. They look good coming out of the gate. For Sussex Central, a good win, a workmanlike performance, and they faced some adversity early in the season, which as a coach you always love. I mean, you see your team 20-20 and then all of a sudden you rip off 21 straight points. So John Wells had to be pleased with that.
Sussex Central is going to host Middletown, so they're going to face perhaps the best team in the state, and we'll talk more about them in a few minutes. Laurel's going to host Brandywine. It's going to be the first game for Brandywine. So, again, I always look at that as that's an advantage for the team that's got one game under their belt and a team that's coming down. And in Brandywine's case, it'll be interesting to see a lot of the schools, just about every public school above the canal, their rosters increase on the first day of school. Yeah, and it goes on. They allow it to go on. The coaches do, because if not, they get some injuries, and all of a sudden they're down to less than 20 players. So they almost have to. And it's just the way it is up here. The days are gone where Butch Simpson would have never let you come onto the field on day 2 of preseason practice if you weren't at day 1. And I mean that as a compliment to Coach Simpson for sure. But Laurel, they host Brandywine. As I said, it's the Battle of the Bone, they call it, because the nicknames of both teams are the Bulldogs. So that should be an opportunity for Laurel to get in the win column, they hope, and an opportunity for Brandywine to start off their season 1-0. All right, if you're looking to buy or sell your house, Mary Kate Johnston with Remax Associates will help you do it as if it was her own. An award-winning realtor with nearly 20 years of experience. She helped my wife and I sell our old house and purchase the one we've been in for the past 18 years. Helped us every single step of the way, the things we had no idea we should know about on both ends of the sale and the purchase of our new home. We have since recommended her to dozens of friends who also were completely satisfied and recommended her to their friends. Whether it's a first home, an upsize, downsize for yourself, an aging parent, or one of your kids, do yourself a favor. Reach out to Mary Kate Johnston with Remax Associates. Her website is marykatej.remax.com. That's marykatej.remax.com. And there you can also check out her multiple 5-star reviews on Zillow and read what others have said as well. All right, let's go to Caesar Rodney, William Penn. Shutout for the Riders, avenged a tough loss last year.
Yeah.
I remember listening to that game. I was listening to it on 30 Sports in my car. So I wasn't watching it because I wanted to be safe, but I was listening to it. And CR almost pulled it off last year. But this time they did pull it off 17-0. It was neat to see, and I found this out a couple of weeks ago, Marty, that Dan Candelora, the former head coach of Caesar Rodney High School, is now an assistant coach with Caesar Rodney High School.
I thought that was so cool too. You never see that happen. That's
no. and I can tell you, Dan is beloved in that school. And I see that when I'm in there for a lot for my work, and he's just a great guy. The players love him, the students love him, the faculty loves him, and so it's a plus when you have a guy like Dan Candelora on your sideline. But worked for game one. He brought him back. He brought him back some luck. CR has struggled the past few years. That was their third win in the past 3 seasons, 3+ this season. So it's been a struggle for Caesar Rodney. Sean Strickland, who went to school there, back now coaching for them after leaving Milford. And so they're hoping to turn this thing around. So, hey, it's a good start. A win's a win, and you take it, and you go to week 2.
It is. I couldn't sleep, so I ended up putting this game on and watching it, the replay of it. This was a strange game because William Penn, I at one point, I think they may have even had 3 touchdowns called back. They had at least 2. They were hit with, it had to be well over 150 yards in penalties. They went up and down the field, but Caesar Rodney kept, aside from the penalties, of course, that were not Caesar Rodney caused, but Caesar Rodney's defense stiffened when they needed to at times, and I was really impressed with the level of play from both of these teams. JoJo Everett, the quarterback from William Penn, who's one of the best in the state, had a great game, and then I had a great note on Twitter that hey, we lost, we did our best, we took it on the chin, we'll be back, and we'll fight. And I thought that's a great thing for a leader to say. On the CR side, I thought Julius Timmons, the quarterback, looked very much in control for much of the game. He actually ran for a touchdown. They got a 21-yard field goal from Brody Hinkle. We always love to highlight the kickers. And then they got a touchdown, 54 seconds to play, which kind of sealed the deal. It's 17-0. And this was, I actually put on Twitter that I was mildly shocked at this. And Sean Strickland's brother called me out and said, "What? Shocked by what?" Jokingly. And I said, well, you know what? I should have been more specific. I wasn't surprised that CR won the game. I was surprised that either team was shut out, given the fact that both teams, especially at the end of last year, Caesar Rodney showed a pretty strong offense. William Penn showed a strong offense all season last year. So this was unexpected. This is a great win to start the season for Sean Strickland, because, every year for the past however many years, they're starting off 0-1, 0-2. And you wonder, do you lose the kids? These kids are coming in fired up now. So I think this is great. William Penn, Coach Sable, there's some work to do there. And I know, like I said, I got some notes from some parents that said, well, the referees played a role in this. They're always going to play a role in this.
Yeah,
but if penalties are penalties, they're penalties. Right. You call them. So bottom line was CR 17, William Penn nothing. A great start for the Riders.
Yeah, I reached out to Matt Sabo, head coach William Penn, as you said, after the game, and he said the same thing. Tough one, penalties. Wasn't blaming the refs. 2 touchdowns called back. That that hurts your momentum, no matter what the reason is. And but they'll come back. He always has his kids. He does a great job there. Very disciplined group of kids. And I asked him just an update for the new stadium, because remember they had that $60 million referendum passed. They're going to redo that whole complex. They're slated to play in their new stadium, which will be with lights and with turf, fall of 2026. So
Wow.
2 more years to go before that happens. But just for anybody following that story, that's going to be the
God, that'll
schedule
be a
for that.
fun place for Friday night football games with the lights there.
Yeah.
They draw pretty good crowds sometimes during the daytime on Saturdays. Of course,
Yep.
they always play, but that'll be interesting.
It'll be interesting. The last couple years, and maybe not even just exactly last year, over the last several years, dating back to even when Marvin Dooley was there, they would bring in lights
Yep.
for a Friday night game, and of course that attracted a huge crowd because it was something special. It'll be interesting to see if that crowd stays the same and stays continual throughout a season when they have, what I assume are 5 Friday night games. Who knows? Maybe they'll throw in a Saturday new game. I don't know that for sure,
Right.
but it is there is going to be turf and there is going to be lights for that. So, all right, the last game we'll talk about is Middletown and Red Bank. Middletown has played a high-powered team for several of the last years, more away games than home games. This was a home game. Red Bank came in from New Jersey. They were the number 4 team in the preseason in New Jersey, 127 nationally. And again, Marty, rankings are rankings. As I always laugh when people put these rankings out. It's basically based on how many people they had back from last year and how they did last year. But you can't argue Red Bank's a good team because
oh my God, they were loaded. Yeah,
they hung right with what might be the best team in Delaware now.
Yes. No, this team was loaded. I went to NJ.com to look at the previews of the game after it was over. And everyone at NJ.com, their 5 writers, kind of assumed this was going to be a pretty fairly easy game for Red Bank Catholic. All 5 picked Red Bank Catholic. This was I could not get my flow stream to work, so I counted on people to kind of text me what was going on there. But Middletown, it sounds like defensively was just phenomenal. They were all over the field. Red Bank could not not get anything going. Jack Wilson, who's the transfer from Red Lion as a junior this year at the Middletown, had a phenomenal game, which we'll talk about a little bit later too. I believe he had 20 plus tackles, 3 for loss, a block punt. And the Middletown offense was very efficient. They scored a touchdown to go up 9-0. There was an early safety. And then again, it was just the defense kind of took over. Red Bank got a late touchdown to make it 16-14. But this was overall a great win for Middletown. And it's one of those where people say, Delaware, they don't do so well against the out-of-state teams. And in some cases this week we didn't. But in this case, this was a highly rated team. They're number 4 in New Jersey. And I believe, again, using those weird rankings, they had them at 127th in the country, which, hey, take what you can get. Middletown beat them. I mean, it wasn't a fluky thing. They dominated the game from start to finish. So this is just a great start for the Cavaliers and kind of sends a message to everybody else out there that they're a team to be reckoned with. Of course, they turn around. They got a tough one to go this week as well.
Heading down to Georgetown, play Sussex Central, coming off the win as we talked about. So Golden Knights, beware. Cavaliers are on the way. But you know what? John Wells will have his team ready to play. Over the years, his teams have played tooth and nail with the toughest teams in the state, and so he'll have them ready to play. All right, so that's going to do it for the wrap-up of the Week 0 games. Athletes and students of all ages, unleash your potential with the Win the Day Planner, your key to building winning habits for a lifetime. This planner was put together by a local longtime wrestling coach and teacher, Dan Rigby, who led both Cesar Rodney and Milford High School to multiple championship appearances and a combined 3 state titles. He has 2 decades of experience teaching and coaching students of all ages and abilities, and this planner is meticulously designed to channel your daily actions toward achieving greatness. What started out as an 18-week planner for one sports season quickly expanded to a 42-week one for the entire school year, and now includes one exclusively for students who don't play sports. I think it could be used for adults as well. I've got a copy, and when I retire, I'm going to get that planner out so I can be productive. Doesn't just help you become a better athlete or student, but a better teammate, a better friend, and most importantly, a better person. It makes priorities that you create for yourself and helps you follow through on them. Get your print or digital copy today at winthedayplanner.com. That's winthedayplanner.com. All right, so we're going to now pick our players of the week. And what we're going to do this year, we decided, is we're going to give out some helmet stickers. And basically, a helmet sticker, a lot of coaches give them out if you've had a great game. And so we're going to do the same. We're going to pick one from each class that will get a helmet sticker, not literally, but that's what we're calling the session here. And then we're going to pick a Promo Zone Player of the Week. We have a new Promo Zone is going to be the new sponsor of the Player of the Week, and we will talk about them more in a second. But let's start with our helmet stickers. We'll start with Class 1A, and so the first helmet sticker goes out to Demir Bryan from First State Military Academy.
Yeah, this was one of the first games of the season, and so I put it on. It was on YouTube, of course, or NFHS Network, so no announcers, no score bug, anything like that. But I figured I'd tune in for a little while. AI was pleasantly surprised, a roster of 23 kids, which is more than they had in the past couple of years. The game starts, the opening kickoff, as FMSA wins the toss, elects to receive, and all Demir Bryant does is take it back 82 yards for a touchdown. So if you're AI and you haven't played in a while, not the great start to get off to, but it really got FSMA fired up. Jeff Braxton has done a great job since he's been there. They went to the playoffs for the first time last year, and Demir Bryan gets our first helmet sticker for getting them off to a great start.
All right. Congratulations, Demir. Good luck in the second game of your season. All right. On to Class 2A, and it's going to be Woodbridge's running back, Tyler Ely.
Tyler Ely, a great game. 2 touchdowns and 11 carries, 71 yards, a 38-0 win over Seaford. This didn't really surprise anyone in terms of the score of the game, but for Marvin Dooley, this is the kind of game he loves, where they just ran the ball down the throats of their opponent over and over and over. And Tyler Ely gets our second helmet sticker for his 71-yard, 2-touchdown performance against Seaford.
Alrighty, so let's move to Class 3A. We're actually going to give 2 helmet stickers away for Class 3A. Let's start with Sussex Central running back Malik Bell.
Malik Bell is great. He's like a wrecking ball. I remember watching some of his highlights from last season, and the kid can just come in and start running over people at the line of scrimmage, but he's also got the speed to get outside. He was pivotal in this win, especially late. 22 carries, 168 yards. He had 3 touchdowns in the 41-20 win over Laurel. By the end of the season, again, this kid's going to be most likely an all-state player. He's phenomenal. Sussex Central running back Malik Bell with our 3A helmet sticker.
All right, first one to Malik. Second one's going to go to the Salesianum wide receiver, Jasir Gaiman.
I had to add Gaiman in there once I saw his stats. Sally's, again, played a good Episcopal Academy team, and a lot of people thought, I believe that even the News Journal guys may have all picked Episcopal, but I looked at the Philly newspaper. Everyone picked Episcopal. Gene Deladon's crew came out and started their defense of their state title in really impressive fashion. I thought they looked like a midseason form on both sides of the ball. Their lines actually dominated. But then you had Jasir Gaiman. Brady McBride had a good game, and Jasir Gaiman was the guy he went to. 10 catches, 135 yards. Also added a 74-yard kickoff return and a 69-yard punt return. Episcopal just had no answers for Jasir Gaiman. He is going to be a beast once they get into their 3A schedule for Salesianum. So Jasir Gaiman gets our second 3A helmet sticker.
All right, so 4 helmet stickers. Now it's time for our Promo Zone Player of the Week. Whatever, whenever, and however you want to promote your organization, product, or anything else, Promotion Zone can help you make the right decisions based on your needs and your budget. Whether it's apparel, pens, coffee mugs, or something out of the ordinary, Promotion Zone is your one-stop shop for all your branding needs. Celebrating their 15th year in business, they're located right here in Delaware, so you're working with people who understand the value of hometown business relationships. You can check them out on Facebook at Promotion Zone DE or on their website at promotionzone.biz. Prefer to call them? It's 302-832-8565, and the best part is you will talk to a human, not an automated system. That's 302-832-8565. Promotion Zone, the swag folks since 2009 for all your branding and apparel needs. And as part of their sponsorship, what they're going to do is they're going to send a Delaware Sports High School podcast T-shirt to the winner of the Promotion Zone Player of the Week. And so, Marty, that first T-shirt's going to be mailed to Jack Wilson, linebacker from Middletown.
Yeah, Jack Wilson was incredible. A few weeks ago, maybe 3-4 weeks ago, I tweeted out on X that I thought one of the more underrated transfers was Jack Wilson from Red Lion to Middletown, and I thought he could have a big impact. He did a lot of everything for Red Lion last year. He played running back when they had some injuries. He was a phenomenal linebacker. He comes into Middletown, and you got to think on some level, he's thinking, okay, I got to go out there and prove myself to the coaches. I mean, everybody knew who he was coming into the season, but If they didn't, they sure do now, especially Red Bank Catholic and their fans.
Right.
I watched the highlights, including the ones that Red Bank put out, and Jack Wilson is all over the place. He starts out by blocking a punt. He just blew through the line and got there. It was a pretty violent stop, but it was perfect. 21 tackles, 3 for loss. He looked like he was directing traffic on defense. And again, a kid coming into the transfer, a junior. I just thought he was phenomenal. He's a kid with a never-ending motor. Comes from a great family, by all accounts, a great kid. And Middletown got a steal here with this kid. He's going to be phenomenal this season. I thought his performance against a team that has some national recognition and number 4 in New Jersey, come out and put that kind of performance on the board was certainly worthy of our first promo zone player of the week. So congratulations to linebacker Jack Wilson of Middletown.
All right, Jack, we'll get up with you, get your address and your T-shirt size, and Promotion Zone will send you the first official T-shirt awarded to a player. So congratulations. All right, it's now time for the Diamond Hill Incorporated Unit of the Week. Diamond Hill Unit of the Week is sponsored by Diamond Hill Incorporated. For more than 20 years, they've been serving all of Delaware and the surrounding areas in all things construction. For commercial, concrete, and site development to residential projects, they have you covered. Email info@diamondhillinc.com for more information. That's info@diamondhillinc.com. And so, Marty, this is the same Unit of the Week we did last year, and we thought it was pretty cool because it gives us an opportunity, whether it's an offense, a defense, an offensive line, a defensive line, whatever it might be. And this time, for this first week, it's going to be the Sussex Central PAT crew, because they made 6 out of 7 PATs in that win over Laurel. And Marty, you know what? If you put an over-under in high school football that, hey, they're going to kick 7 PATs in a game, and I said to you the number 5, you'd probably take the under, most likely, for that to be successful, because it takes 3 talented guys to make it happen. Kicker Rodney Escobar Gonzalez did the kicking, but it all starts with the center, and it was Bradley Chavez, and I know you've got a neat story about that, and the holder, Eli Pucci, who made this happen. So the 3 of them, 6 out of 7 successful kicks. And a coach will take that one miss 6 out of 7 anytime, because 6 is huge in that PAT category in high school.
Absolutely.
Football.
And you and I watch enough high school and college football to know that this is not always the easiest thing to do. We see enough missed kicks and missed snaps, and these guys were near perfect. The only one that they missed was blocked, and it was because of a missed assignment on the line is all. The interesting thing here, the long snapper, Bradley Chavez, the only answer we didn't have to this puzzle. We had Pucci, we had Escobar Gonzalez. We couldn't figure out who the center was. So I went back and watched the tape, and I still couldn't find him at first because there's all these huge bodies, but I couldn't see anybody snapping the ball. So I kept watching the tape, and all of a sudden this smaller, much smaller guy comes out every time, and it's the quarterback, Bradley Chavez, number 3, who is the long snapper on the extra points. And I love it because these snaps were perfect. And here you are, you're putting your that is a dangerous position, by the way, for anybody out there playing football. So I thought this was phenomenal, but it just add to the mystique of this Sussex Central PAT unit. A phenomenal performance by the 3 of those guys. They were in sync every single time. So they're our winner of the Diamond Hill Unit of the Week.
All right, and that brings us to the Grain Restaurant College Performance or Performances of the Week, something we decided to do new this year. Grain Restaurants were kind enough to come back as a sponsor. If you remember, they actually sponsored the Player of the Week last year with gift cards, and we learned early on that players can't receive gift cards because they have a cash value. So we switched to a T-shirt, brought in Promotion Zone, but we're thrilled to have Grain Restaurants come back, owned by Jim O'Donohue and Lee Michaels. Grain Restaurants were started by those 2 guys, and it started on Main Street in Newark, and they've quickly grown to additional locations. There's a spot in the Summit Marina on the C&D Canal right up the street from me, and Lewis at the ferry terminal. My cousin was at that one the other day and texted me how great it was. He had no idea we had a relationship with him. And their newest location on the Star campus in Newark, right across from the Delaware Stadium. The restaurants have become nightly or weekly hangouts for some, gathering spots for special occasions for others. They're just a new place to try and usually return to. My family goes to the one right up the street from us at the Summit Marina all the time. The menu is something for everyone, some usuals and some peculiars, but best of all, you never leave disappointed or hungry. My favorite part of Grain is knowing that it was started by 2 local guys. They were sitting in a fire pit in the driveway and decided, let's open a restaurant. And that's what they did. And it's really gone from there. And they're huge supporters of the community, not just this podcast, but a lot of nonprofit organizations. They love sports and love supporting the community in a lot of ways. And we appreciate their support. That's Jim O'Donohue and Lee Michaels, founders of the Grain Restaurants. All right. And so the Grain Restaurant, we got a couple college looks. And folks, listen, if you know college players had a great day, there's 76 of them who are just freshmen in college. And so we know there's probably another 75 Delawareans who are playing in college who didn't graduate last year. So please let us know. Send us a message on Facebook or on X, or email us and just let us know if you know of these performances. We want to try to get as many out there as we can. I'm going to start with one. Quarterback Cam Edge, who played for Smyrna, he threw his first touchdown pass at the University of Maryland in a 58-7 win over UConn. It's either 58 or 50-7. I can't read my own handwriting, but he was 4 of 6 for 57 yards. And so congratulations to Cam Edge for completing and his first touchdown pass of his college career, one that certainly, hopefully, Marty, if he's in at that point in the game, I got to assume he's the backup quarterback, right? You usually don't go to a third quarterback in that, but maybe not.
You know what? He actually was the third quarterback. The second quarterback came in and took a violent headshot and had to be taken off the field. Morris, who was a transfer from NC State. Cam Edge was right in that quarterback battle for number one until the end. There's 3 quarterbacks, and it just so happened that that was the way it played out. But if you go on the Maryland websites last night and then look at some stuff today, they love Cam Edge in College Park. He's obviously going to be number 2 now, because I can't imagine Morris is going to come back quickly from the shot he took yesterday. Right. It was an ejectable shot. It was a targeting, but yeah, Cam Edge looked great, I thought, yesterday. And a shout out to Twitter Phil, who's been a friend of the show for a long time. He sent a bunch of Smyrna guys who were in college that I hadn't even thought of. They weren't on any list that I had, and I should have, because some of these guys really stand out. Debo Williams, the former Smyrna star, 5 tackles, a fumble recovery for South Carolina in their 23-19 win over Old Dominion last night. Nate Chandler, who is at Sacred Heart, had his first sack of his career yesterday against Delaware State. Delaware State, by the way, that great performance from them. Win. They actually got on the winning side after a strong performance against Hawaii. And the Knight brothers were both playing for ODU. I didn't see either of them in the game, and they didn't appear in the box score, but we know they're there. And yeah, it looks like that's all we have. Wayne Knight and Ymir Knight. Debo Williams is I went on one of the South Carolina websites. The fans down there love him. The coaches love him. He's going to be a big part of the season if they're going to make some noise. And South Carolina is a program that's been down for a little bit, but they have Shane Beamer now as the head coach. So hopefully they're going to get something going.
All right, so that's the look outside the high school level to the college level, sponsored.
Oh, real quick, I'm sorry.
Yep.
I don't want to forget one more. Markel Holman for Sacred Heart yesterday, 13 carries, 48 yards, and a touchdown. He was if you remember, he's at William Penn to start his career and then transferred to Smyrna his senior year, had a great year. So sorry to cut you off there, but I didn't want to leave Markel Holman out.
Nope, glad you got him in. So again, if you know people that do well at the college level, get the messages to us. We'll get as many on the air as we can. All right, so that officially wraps up this past weekend, whether you call it week 0 or whatever you call it, both at high school and in some cases the college level. Now we're going to look ahead to the week 1 games to watch. They start Thursday, go Friday, Saturday. And so, Marty, I picked one for every day. I don't know how you did it, but I'll start with the Thursday game. I mentioned, Hodson plays at Caravel. It's a 3A versus 2A game. And I was thinking about this, Marty. I think a loss by the Silver Eagles tells us more about them than a win might, if that makes sense. So in other words, they kind of struggled a little bit against Howard, a legitimate 2A team.
Yep.
And Caravel, probably, if you had to pick today, you would say Caravel's probably a notch above Howard, just because they won the state. They rattled through the schedule last year like they were playing scrimmages all year.
Yeah.
And they have a lot of their teams back. So let's assume Caravel is better than Howard. If Hodson is not able to handle Caravel, I think it makes it a tough argument that Hodson's. We always try to split
in the upper
3A
echelon
in the 2 echelons. I think it's hard to put them in that upper echelon since they, struggled against Howard. If they lose to Caravel, I think that's and Dave Collins is a great coach and he's a realist, and so he's going to learn from his team too, because, as we said, they've got a game under their belt. And so it's going to give them an opportunity to fix the problems. And so, what they're probably hoping is we fix the problems and Caravel has some of those first game jitters, so to speak. And so
I agree.
So I think that's kind of how I'm looking at that game. I think if Hodson beats Caravel, it's a great win. Don't get me wrong. It's a great win, but it is 3A versus 2A. So I think a loss would tell us a little bit more about Hodson's team as it stands in what will be week 1 of the season. It doesn't mean they don't get better, because that's what happened. That's exactly what happened last year.
I was just going to say, Yep.
So.
And Caravel, the one thing I think if this were both teams' opening game, you'd have, Vegas guys would have Caravel as a slight favorite. I think what evens it out is that Hodson has played the game. Like you said, they've got a week to study the film and get some of these things fixed. So this is a really, I think, important game. And to your point, I think this is going to tell us a lot about both teams early on. This is a 302 stream game, so if you can't make it to Caravel, which is again the home spot for Hodson and Caravel, this is a great game to kick off the week.
All right, I'll let you go with the first. I think that's the only Thursday game. If I
it is,
schedule
it is.
So let's go to Friday. What game would you watch?
Friday, I'm looking at, and this may be a little off the radar, but I'm looking at St. Mark's and St. George's. And here's why. St. Mark's made some noise last year. They had a chance to make the playoffs. One of the games that killed them was they had a lead against St. George's. They were controlling the game and then all of a sudden lost it. It was a big win for St. George's. Neither team actually ended up making the playoffs. But this to me is going to be really important, because at the end of the season, and I'm being realistic here, this is probably maybe a battle for the 7, 8, or somebody gets left out of the playoffs. So whoever wins this game has a leg up there. But from a confidence standpoint, I think the winner comes out of this with a ton of confidence as they move on in the season.
Yeah, it's a cross-district game, as a lot of these games are, either cross-class or cross-districts early on. All right, I'm going to go Sally's at Smyrna. Sally's coming off a big win. Smyrna coming off a big loss against Towningtown in that Big Skin Classic, But as Mike Judy said in the interview afterward, he said, look, you learn from this and you move on. He said, we're not going to play a better team than we just played. And so that, they got beat soundly, but they've lost early games before. Mike Judy schedules these tough games early so that when he gets into the meat of the schedule in the games you have to win to make the playoffs, that's his goal, is to make the playoffs and have his team ready. And so that's going to be a great matchup. That's going to be on 302 Sports as well. I think it's going to be Glenn Frazier doing that game along with Pat Garianti. So you can tune in for free at 302 Sports to watch that if you want. And so, I just think that's going to be a very interesting game. And I think, as I already mentioned, the Odessa at Appo, that would be my second choice on Friday because Odessa's got the game under their belt. Appo's got to figure out who the quarterback's going to be, or maybe it's 2 quarterbacks. They've got a great wide receiver crew led by Noah Hoff, all-state receiver, and to see how their defense is going to be, and the offensive line. They got that the Von Brandt kid, the 6'7", he's being recruited by everybody, Leighton Von Brandt. But we'll see whether teams avoid him completely on both sides of the ball or what they do. And so I think that would be my second game for Friday. So those are my 2.
And I just want to hit on the Smyrna Sally's game too. You got Sally's playing now a wounded animal in Smyrna who was just blown off the field on Saturday night, or Friday night, excuse me. And they don't want to start 0-2, which they did last year. And of course, they came back. They finished 4-6, I believe, in the regular season, made the playoffs, and then threw the scare of all scares into eventual state champion Salesianum. So I was joking with somebody on Twitter and said the same thing. I said, well, what we know is if Smyrna loses this game to Salesianum, it's just fuel for the fire, and they'll end up scaring the crap out of somebody at the end of the season in the playoffs, if not beating them.
Right.
Drew Marks is trying to make his mark as a second-year quarterback. It's all on him right now, and they just played a superior team. And it reminds me, I say this every year, it reminds me, it's the Stan Wooderman school of scheduling, where you schedule the toughest teams you can so that when you get to the state tournament, you've seen everything there is to see. So I think those other matchups are great as well. I think for me, I had another matchup here. Of course, Saturday, Middletown at Sussex Central, I think is just a huge game. I know people are going to say, oh, they're staying on 3A. These are the big games of the week,
Right.
folks. These are week one, part two. I'll call this. Yeah, Middletown and Sussex Central. Middletown coming off a huge win. There's a lot of emotion there as they beat the number 4 team in Jersey. Sussex Central coming off a workmanlike performance. This is going to be a battle of the lines to me. You've got two good teams, both of them with offensive and defensive lines that are very strong, and going down to Sussex Central is not easy. And it's probably the reason why Middletown, for a very long time, did not go down to Sussex Central until we had this new realignment phase. But should be a great game.
302 Sports has that one too. Benny
Yep.
Mitchell and Jim Tack will be on the call for that one as well. All right, I'm going to go to Mount Pleasant, Concord at Mount Pleasant. It's a district game. It's the first game for Concord head coach Darren Brody, who played at Concord back in the early 90s, played under George Kasanovich, the legendary coach from Concord. He's actually still an assistant coach on that staff. And I looked at the list and I saw Zeb Blum is also an assistant.
Oh, wow.
Who former longtime AI DuPont coach, brother of Zach Blum, the head coach at Middletown. So it's great to see Zeb Blum back on a sideline. Did a great job at AI. And then I was back on the sideline as well. Mount's coming off a 26 loss to Milford. Concord, again, it's their opening game. So you have that situation where Mount coming off a loss, learn some things. Home field advantage on a Saturday, always a fun way. If the weather's good, it won't be crispy fall weather yet up there, but it should be decent. And so it should be a pretty good crowd. So I think that Concord Mount Pleasant game would be one that I would go to for sure. So there you have it. Our games to watch in week 1, or as Marty called it, what do you call it? Week 1A or
Week
something
1,
like
part
that.
2.
Week 1,
Week 1, part 2.
And so, that is where we would go if we went to games. We tend to stay home and watch multiple games at the same time.
Yes.
But I may actually go, like I went to the Glasgow game this week. I may zip up there to Mount Pleasant for sure. All right, it's time to wrap up the show with our Marticelli Restaurant Group trivia question of the week, something we started last year, had a lot of great feedback from it. And it's these guys, the Marticelli Restaurant Group, they own the Chesapeake Inn, Klondike Kate's, and La Costa Pasta. And the winner of the trivia contest gets a $50 gift card that's good at any one of those 3 restaurants. And Marty, I'm not just saying this because they sponsor the podcast. When I go out to eat as a family, which we don't do as often as we used to, it's to one of those 3 restaurants typically up here. That's just they're great places, great atmospheres, great food, and very popular places. They're known for their delectable dishes, cozy ambiance, and exceptional service. And thanks to the Marticelli Group, as I mentioned, you're going to get a gift card to go there. You can enjoy signature crab cakes and other fresh seafood at the Chesapeake Inn, homemade pastas and seafood specialties at La Casa Pasta, or Klondike Kate's up there on campus, their famous cheesesteak, egg rolls, and nachos. We can't thank the Marticelli Group enough for supporting our podcast and in turn supporting high school football here in Delaware. So Marty, I'll let you announce who won the one that we did. We did a trivia contest earlier in the season, with our preseason show a few weeks ago, and then give the listeners today's trivia question.
The winner of our first one was Tyler Warfel. Excuse me. He was the winner of our first $50 gift card. I'll be honest, I don't remember the question at this point, but I'll if I can find it, I'll put that back on Twitter. It's funny. I spent last night trying to come up with a trivia question, but we'll go to something involving a game this week, which I always like to do. So Sussex Central plays Middletown. These 2 teams played in 2020. Before that, there was a 13-year gap when these teams played. They hadn't played since 2007. To win the $50 Marticelli Group gift card, what were the special circumstances surrounding both of those games, the 2007 matchup and the 2020 matchup between Middletown and Sussex Central, South Carolina? I got Debo Williams on the head. You can respond. We picked the winner Wednesday night at 8. You can send John and I a direct message. Please don't put the answer on Twitter, or you can send it to our email account, which is always the best way, delhsfootball@gmail.com. That's delhsfootball@gmail.com. gmail.com. And again, what was the special significance of the 2007 and 2020 Middletown and South Carolina? Jeez, I'm still stuck on South Carolina and Sussex Central matchups.
All right, there you have it. And again, thank you to the Marticelli Restaurant Group for sponsoring the podcast, and to all our sponsors: Grain Restaurant, Promotion Zone, Diamond Hill Incorporated, Mary Kate Johnston with Remax Associates, Dan Rigby, author of the Win the Day Planner, and Andre L. Photography Excellence from every angle. And of course, the presenting sponsor of the podcast, websitesforsports.com. If you're a sports player, parent, or fan, it's the only website with the schedule of every high school and middle school team, statistics, and more. Don't forget to follow us on X at DELHS Football and Facebook at the DLHS Football Pod. Just Google either one of them and they'll pop right up. Please like and share our podcast to help us spread the word about the wonderful sport of high school football here in Delaware. Marty, we're going on to week 1 part 2 next week. I'm looking forward to
Love it. Me too.
All right. Until next time, for Marty Sheehan, I'm John Buzby. Have a great sports week.